Welcome fans and welcome all to the Halloween special you all are just dying to see. And something that I've never done before on my channel, and I felt it was perfect to do this year for sure. Because today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the opportunity to compare which Halloween special of the two was the freakiest. And I am talking about the DuckTales and Amphibia episode special. And boy must I say, I am ready to analyze. Hold on to your popcorn. So in today's special, we gotta first begin with DuckTales' The Trickening. And right from the beginning, we're presented with the triplets and Webby preparing for their massive trick-or-treat planning. Dewey is a pirate, Louie is Huey.
Junior Woodchuck Rule 9 million.
Because how much scarier can you get? No, wait a minute. Then there's Huey himself, who ends up costuming as Gizmo Duck, which is reasonably due to his admiration towards Gizmo Duck and Fenton in real life. Or just robots in general, because he apparently also received multiple awards in robotics. Scrooge goes out with his exoskeleton costume, which not only is creepy, but also could be an indication of just how incredibly old to the bones he is. I mean, what is he, like 2 centuries years old? Now, I saved the most interesting for last, and it's Webby's costume, as she claims it to be the evil eye curse that plagues 17th century Europe. This could have been just made up lore within the show mixed in with actual history behind Halloween, because unlike an eye curse that plagued Europe, forcing others to dress up and give out sweets to appease the undead, the actual history of Halloween, or Hallows' Eve, is about people in ancient times giving out treats or other sacrifices for the undead to be pleased, or for people to simply trick the spirits into believing that they too were the undead by dressing up as them. But enough about the bitter history of Halloween. Eventually, Louie of course has a scheme of his own to gather up the most amount of candy this year by entering the premises of, and you guessed it, an abandoned haunted house. By the way, this reminds me of Disney's old film, The Haunted Mansion, which stars Eddie Murphy. That was pretty hilarious when I was a younger kid, so if you haven't seen it, because Disney for some reason hasn't been airing that as much, I guess, go watch it, because it was pretty funny. All of this is going on while Donald and Della have their very own little adventure with Launchpad, who, of all people, have no knowledge of Halloween and its holiday whatsoever. There's even a flashback of him reading the ingredients off of a candy wrapper, thinking that they were instead enchantments for rising the living dead.
The sacred text.
Monosodium glutamate sucralose polysorbate blue 52 fructose corn syrup artificial flavoring.
Yeah, I died of laughter after hearing Launchpad read off the ingredient corn syrup. That thing is the main diabetes-ridden component in all processed sweets known to man. After a while over the supposedly haunted home, the triplets and Webby soon begin to realize just why exactly no one seems to visit the house. Because as it turns out, not only was the home clearly haunted, but literally ran by actual monsters who felt it necessary to mimic horrors of today's thrillers.
Kids today don't appreciate the classics. You're scared of, like, random kid stuff. Puppets. Clowns. Little girls in wells. What is wrong with you guys?
The monsters would use each year to scare the children who dared to come and visit the home, and scare them enough to the point where all of their candy would drop to the floor. But if they didn't get the candy that they craved, they resort to consuming children. But thankfully, Launchpad intervenes and manages to even frighten the monsters themselves, because somebody forgot to put Jason Voorhees on the list of newly infamous villains. Also Freddy Krueger, but that's for another show. And so the day is saved, once Scrooge decides after years of candy hoarding that it's time that he gave back to the community with treats, as long as they pay an admission fee, but come on. I guess you are getting it from the world's most well-known adventurer slash investor. Plus, this also solved the issue with the monsters in the end, since Scrooge's generosity helped their cravings. Now, I do believe it's time that we transferred over to the Amphibia Halloween special, which also had its introduction changed for the sake of it, by having the theme be played in a creepier tone, as well as have the visuals be manipulated quite a bit. Whereas for the DuckTales intro, mainly focused on the end title's design and the theme itself, like how they did for the Christmas special back in season 2. And I don't blame either team for choosing these minimal changes within the introductions, especially DuckTales, because the intro is so well detailed, you just can't change it too much, you know? Anyways, coming from the strange world of Amphibia, instead of celebrating Halloween, they have another annual day they acknowledge called the Annual Shut-In, which essentially is where all of the townsfolk gather supplies around the town for them to be able to lock themselves inside of their own homes. oh the irony, for an entire evening while the blue moon shows up, since the blue moon has said to affect the bodies of common folk by transforming them into beasts if they stare into it. So after Anne and the rest gather all the necessary supplies they need for the night, they decide to pass the time by telling each other other horror stories that, according to Hapadaya, has to have really happened in real life. And when I first heard him say this, it really got to me because when I tell you what happens in these stories, except for Anne's because she claims that it's not really a story about her, but instead one from her phone. Not sure how that makes sense. I'm sure you're probably gonna be wondering how in the world this got past the Disney censors. But about Anne's story, she could have been just flat out messing around, plus she even had to make up character names for her story that clearly represented her, Sprig, and Polly. Within her tale, however, she expresses a story about an adorable cat-like creature that traps whoever watches the video of it, and it's something so incredibly lovable that not a single dislike can be seen. Which that alone should have raised some eyebrows. There was even one time when I watched a video about some guy getting attacked with love by a group of puppies, yet the video still managed to have over 4,000 dislikes. Who are these people and where do they live? And do they also manage to dislike my videos as well? Anyways, legend says that whoever witnesses the video eventually turns out to be missing. Of course, Anna, Anne basically, dares to watch the cursed video anyways, and something unspeakable happens. The animal comes from out of the phone and into the real world after Anna realizes that all of the missing people are in the video itself and begins to transform into a hideous beast. And the only way for it to be defeated is through the ungodly task of disliking the video. Anna even has to go even further by leaving a vicious comment on the comment section for all to see. I think the plot twist is that the creature is angry because he's actually the YouTuber of that channel and she just messed up his algorithm. So in the end, all of Anna's friends get rescued through the power of criticism and pure evil. But honestly, we haven't even quite scratched the surface, so get ready. The next ones get even darker from here on out, and mind you, these are stories told that have actually happened to the planters. So keep that in mind. The next one is of Hop Pop in his early days as a wagoner, which is practically a taxi or an Uber in that time, I guess, with him having to drive a man by the name of Little Pot. Someone who over time shows himself out to be more than just a casual writer, but instead the collector of souls, doing the same as Hapadaya, just simply taking people where they need to be. The first person who presumably dies is a person who suffers from red leg, which back in season 1 was a deadly disease that turns your skin red and eventually kills you. The second is of an elderly woman who has the unfortunate case of a slaughter snake slipping through her window as a consequence for not closing them. And what happens next is what you'd expect. She, of course, doesn't exactly make it out alive, and this time, Hapadaya figures out the person who he's driving around. But it's already too late. The last stop on the list is his very own home, and the Reaper has no other choice than to collect his last soul of the night. The soul of Hapadaya Planter's hair. Now, of course, the ending may have been anticlimactic, but let's not forget about the very souls that night lost and immediately captured by the Frog Reaper of Amphibia himself. Seriously, I wonder if sometime in the future we end up ever seeing him show up after the death of an actual character, whether it be after a heroic sacrifice or potentially something even more grim. The very last story is the most terrifying of them all in my opinion, and that's of Sprig's tale between him and Ivy. One evening, the two prance along the lonely woods underneath the night sky while playing around with their basketball. That is until Ivy mistakenly hits it out of bounds and into an abandoned home. She also accidentally reveals her hair, which she's too embarrassed to show, even though Sprig turns out to like it anyways. So both Sprig and Ivy enter inside of the home, only to come find out that they meet face to face with a frog skin-stealing amphibian. And yes, it would use the skin of other local frogs for its own self-benefit. And though it may not be for the fact that these are not human beings, instead they are frogs, this is just as creepy as Invader Zim's organ-stealing episode, but similar to the Avatar's face-stealing demon.
Someone is going to kill them!
And so the tale concludes with them eventually finding out that the creature is a glass frog too afraid of its very own skin. But it still doesn't blind the fact that this thing literally could be murdering frogs and using their skin as clothing. So Ivy does the responsible thing in knocking out the creep and managing to escape alongside, just barely, with Sprig. Ivy even helps Sprig after his tale by barging into their house in real time in order to haunt everyone even more. And let me tell ya, they did a good job. It's great, honestly, to see just how much children in this show can go through so much of the most traumatic experiences, yet joke about it just time later. Even after surviving yet another scare with Sprig's horrifying tale, Polly still desperately tries to have her own story to tell by looking into the blue moon in order for her to turn into a monster. And I just find it appalling how she came to that conclusion. I guess after months of getting through heck and back, she figures even if she does transform, everyone will just find a cure for her. Because by the way, she does in the end turn into a monster, and who's to say that there's a guarantee that she can revert back. But anyways, the episode wraps up here at this point, and before I get done discussing about it, I believe it's imperative to note where this episode takes place. Now, it's labeled as production code 212 of the season instead of 211, meaning that this is indeed after the events of Anne choosing to travel back with the Planters, but also directly after the soon-to-be-released 11th. Matt Bradley had even confirmed that the second half of Amphibia is expected to be released possibly prior to spring of next year, which I preferred anyways, cause this year sucks! But with all that being said, it's time to have a final verdict, and dare might I say that this is a no-brainer. No big brain time necessary because hands down, Amphibia Special was the freakiest. They even ended the whole shebang with showing the skeletons of both Anne and Sprig as the outro, and for some reason witnessing the bones of Sprig freaked me out more. Don't know if anyone else felt the same. The story that really grabbed my attention for sure was of Sprig's story about the frog skin-stealing creature. I mean, I watched puppets coming to life during breakfast. Now, as always, thank you all for participating in yet another The Next Big Thing video. I hope you all enjoyed today's spooky special, and I will catch you all in the next one.